So I'm joined by Beth Lindop and Mark Ogden, both of whom were at Anfield for the surprise result. I think we can say, Mark, let's come to you first for perhaps the Manchester United perspective. Have we got Ruben Amorim all wrong? Is he getting 3 years? Is he getting them back to the big time? Is this it?
Well, yeah, I suppose the contract's waiting for him to be signed this week, isn't it, after winning at Anfield for the first time since 2016. So that is a big achievement. I mean, listen, Man United obviously are bigger than that. They've won Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues, but winning at Anfield is a significant moment. So we have to give Amorim credit. I must admit, when I saw the team at first, I was a little bit surprised that Casemiro started, having played 90 minutes for Brazil, including a game in Tokyo on Tuesday. But listen, Amorim got his selection bang on. He got his tactics perfect. And, I was sat there watching it, and I've seen a lot of United in recent years. And whenever they've played away at a big team, they've been quite timid. And it's almost like they've played like almost a lower league FA Cup side in some ways, that they don't believe they have the confidence or the ability to win a game. But from Sunday, just watching it, they looked like they felt they belonged on the pitch, that they had the confidence to go at Liverpool, and that they felt like they were equals. Now, obviously, recent form and league table position suggests they're not, but they had a bit of a belief about United, and the system works, the players worked. Cunha was outstanding, even though he didn't score again. So whether United deserved the win doesn't really matter, does it? They won the game. Obviously, Gakpo hit the post twice, maybe 3 times if you count the one that kind of strangely bounced off the bar on the post. But look, great win for United. It doesn't matter if they deserve to win it or not. They deserve to win it from the sense that they got their tactics right, their selection right, and as Beth will say in a minute, Liverpool got a few things wrong, and there are some issues beginning to build up there in every area of the pitch, really.
Beth, I'll come to you in a minute, but just to follow up on that, Mark. I mean, you mentioned about Amorim there and getting his tactics right. I mean, we're not alone in this, but we've been talking for weeks and weeks and months about the system, and he needs to change, and there needs to be a greater degree of flexibility. Do you think the fact that every selection call that he made at Anfield, the fact that it was very much his victory, they played in his style, he brought in Maguire, who scored the winning goal, he played Fernandes in the middle, in that central midfield that everyone says doesn't work, he dropped Sesko, which is a big call, to play the 3 instead up front. The fact that he's done all of that and he's got this win, does that mean there is now no chance at all that he is going to change this system whatsoever, and that United are just going to continue to live and die by that system?
Well, now that it works, he might be confident enough to try something else, but I think he's going to stick with it, obviously. I think one thing he didn't mention there, which I thought was really significant, was the goalkeeper, Senna Lammers. I think, he just brought a real sense of calmness and composure. And I think, we know that in recent years, Andre Onana and recently Altay haven't been great for United, but the defenders never trusted either of those goalkeepers. And I think even towards the latter days of David De Gea's time at the club, the defenders were worried about what he was going to do. Now, to have a goalkeeper behind them, albeit it's only 2 games, that is calm, is commanding, he can communicate well with his defenders, it makes such a difference. And the defenders seem to be able to play a little bit further up the pitch yesterday, knowing that they had a goalkeeper behind them that would mop up, that would take the crosses, that would want the ball in the 6-yard box. And he was happy also on both feet, right foot, left foot, to knock it long. And it must be great for a Maguire or a De Ligt to know that you've got a guy behind you who can do all that. So it came from the goalkeeper, that belief and that confidence. And you're right, that the selection was great, and the kind of variability of playing Cunha instead of Sesko. But it worked, the system worked. They played a long ball, they went for the second balls, but it all worked. And I think we know that Amorim said so often, give me this season where I've got a free week between games, I can work on the system. And I put my hands up. I've said plenty of times that having that week can sometimes work against them, because, they're confusing the players, but maybe the full week. It was international break last week, wasn't it? So maybe you got away with it that way. But look, it works. They got a great result. And if you win at Anfield with that system, it shows you can basically go anywhere and get a result. Beth,
if Amorim has now found the blueprint, is it fair to say that Arne Slot is still looking for his? It feels as though this is a team that doesn't quite know what it wants to be or how it wants to play. I noticed Virgil van Dijk after the game talking about how they all felt a bit rushed. They don't look like champions, do they, at the moment?
No, absolutely not. I think at this moment in time, it's very difficult to see them going on to retain the title. And obviously things can change quickly in football. It's only a few weeks ago that they'd won all of the first 5 games, and Arsenal had drawn to Manchester City, and the talk was Liverpool were going to run away with it. So there is obviously time for things to change. But yeah, I think as you say, at the moment, they don't have an identity. And I think that's probably the biggest difference to last season. You know, they knew what they wanted to be last season, Liverpool. They were controlled in possession. But they were also dogged as well. They were hardworking. They had elements of Klopp's Liverpool sort of intertwined with this greater control that Slot had implemented. And they had, you know, they were fortunate, I guess, in a sense that a lot of those the players that they have were fit most weeks. So Slot knew what his best 11 was. I think he was able to use best 11 7 times last season, which is more than Klopp was able to use in over 400 games in charge. So, you know, that's not just purely down to luck. It's obviously down to medical things and stuff behind the scenes. But I think this season, obviously, there's been so much change over the summer, and it's sort of this real sort of conflict, I think, for Slot between trying to retain things that were good about last season while also trying to embed these new players. And I think that just isn't quite working for him at the moment.
How integral to this is the fact that Florian Wirtz and Alexander Isak have played so little football together? I was looking at it this morning. I think it's just over 200 minutes they've played together. Now, I know obviously there's injuries, and the fact that they didn't sign Isak till late is a big part of that. But if he's going to find a sort of preferred 11, a sort of settled style of play, surely those two and developing their understanding is going to be key to that, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely think that the way to go for Slot probably going forward is to try and build something with these players that the club have signed, because, you know, when these players are brought in, they obviously, you know, they have a plan. The club have a plan. And I'm sure the plan didn't involve leaving Florian Wirtz, who could end up costing Liverpool £116 million, is to leave him on the bench for two of the biggest games of the season, away to Chelsea and at home to Manchester United. So I think, yes, there is, for me, I would personally, if I were on a Slot, would like to see, you know, I would try and start the two of them together. I think there was a little bit of bewilderment in the press room yesterday when the team news came out and Isak was starting and Florian Wirtz wasn't. You know, I think Isak and Ekitike are different kinds of striker. I think Ekitike is maybe more aligned to the old Liverpool, where he can drop deep a little bit more and he enjoys sort of being almost like that little bit of a false nine at times, whereas Isak is more of your sort of out and out striker, I guess. So I think to get the best out of Isak, you're probably better having a player like Florian Wirtz behind him. So for me, what I would like to see is for Slot to sort of persist with these new signings, even if that means maybe a period of adaptation, even if that means, you know, there's some tough results over the next few months. I think trying to revert back to as close as last season's 11 as possible, which I think he's maybe tried to do in the last 2 games, just hasn't worked. And I think, you know, trying to forge a new team in his image is probably the way that he's going to go about having long-term success with the players that Liverpool signed over the summer.
Mark, I mean, there were a lot of big names on the pitch at the end of that game for Liverpool as they were trying to chase it. It feels as though it's big names being thrown together rather than any kind of cohesion. But obviously some of those big names are not really performing. Isak missed that great chance in the first half. And Mohamed Salah has not had another good game, another week where perhaps people are starting to talk a little bit more about him. What have you made of those two in particular?
Well, I think it's got to the point now where Slot has to make a massive decision. He has to either drop his most expensive player or drop his biggest star, or even both, because they're not doing it. And, you know, he's sat 1 goal in 7 so far. You know, Salah's got a slightly better rate, but his performances in recent weeks have kind of dropped off a cliff. And I think the bigger issue for me is that, you know, we all talk about who they brought in, and we know they've brought in some great players, but they've lost some great players as well. I think 7 first-team players in, 7 first-team players out. And the big one for me was Luis Diaz, Darwin Núñez, and obviously the tragedy with Diogo Jota. But what Liverpool have lost now, you know, Darwin Núñez was the hardest working player in that side. He would chase everything, run down blind alleys, and obviously his finishing wasn't great, and that was what ultimately led to him going. But you've lost Darwin Núñez's work rate, you've lost Luis Diaz's work rate and tenacity. You've lost, obviously, Jota's the same. You know, Jota would press harder than anybody in the final third, and with those gone, you've suddenly got Mo Salah, who doesn't press, who doesn't do any kind of defensive work. You've got Alexander Isak, who's pretty much the same. Isak, you know, spent a lot of time yesterday just joining around and waiting for the ball to come to him, but that's his game. So you've got Cody Gakpo, who, you know, Gakpo put in a real shift against United and, you know, was unlucky not to score a hat-trick, really. But when you take away the work rate that Liverpool have had and replace it with great players such as Isak and Wirtz, who don't particularly put the work in, then all of a sudden it puts so much pressure on the rest of your team that if your forwards aren't working as hard as they were last season, then you're going to see a drop-off, and that the midfield are going to be overrun. The defence obviously has to do much more defending, and we saw against United that Van Dijk and Konate were shaky. But I do think it stems to the fact that they've lost a lot of work rate in the forward positions, and it's been really highlighted now when you look at Salah. I mean, I saw Wayne Rooney did a kind of a tactical overview of Salah's performance against Chelsea, and he said, look, he doesn't do any work. He highlighted 3 or 4 different occasions when he just left his right back to do everything. And Salah can't get away with that if he's not scoring goals or creating assists. So Salah's a problem. He has to. I mean, I put Ekitike in ahead of Isak because I think Ekitike has had a much better start. He does more for the team, but this isn't going to go away, is it? I don't think Ekitike and Isak can play together because they both want to occupy the same space. So they've got a lot of great players, but maybe they've created a problem for themselves that they can't solve because they've got so many big names and attacking talents that you can't play them all. And obviously those that don't play are going to be frustrated.
Beth, you obviously speak to Arne Slot all the time. I mean, he's always come across as being very composed and, sort of unfazed by things. I mean, I suppose when you're winning every week last year, he didn't really have too much difficulty to overcome. But do you get a sense that he's worried about this or that he's panicking a little bit?
Not yet. I think... I know some sort of Liverpool fans have been frustrated with some of his comments, and sort of the wider football community has maybe taken a few quotes that he's said after the past couple of games and sort of used that as, it's sour grapes, or he sounds like he's, being a bad loser. And first of all, I think, there were very few elite football managers that are good losers. But I also think, the manager, unless you're Ruben Amorim, who is probably too honest at times, you're not going to come out and throw your players under the bus. I'm sure he does have concerns. I don't think you can watch the Liverpool team at the moment and not be concerned by the way that they are playing. But he got asked yesterday, have these players completely lost confidence? And he said no. He said, I don't necessarily feel like they have. He said, when you're creating so many chances as Liverpool did yesterday, then it's hard to feel like they've lost confidence. And listen, I think a win for Liverpool yesterday would have completely papered over the cracks, but they could have quite easily. As Mark said, they hit the post 3 times. They had, United had some other good chances that they didn't score as well, but Liverpool probably edged it in terms of chances. So it could have been a very different narrative today. But I think just going back to what Mark said about Salah, I think that is probably one of the biggest decisions that Slot has to make now, because, last season Salah came out and basically said he's had a conversation with Arne Slot in pre-season where he said kind of, I'll win you the Premier League, but I need to be given the license to just score goals, basically, and have that freedom. And that really worked for Liverpool last season. Salah was given sort of a little bit of a free pass when it came to defending and tracking back. But, he delivered by scoring, probably had one of his best seasons in a Liverpool shirt, scored more than 30 goals. But with those goals not coming now, he can't afford to be a passenger in this side, particularly when you're trying to bed in new players. So I think Slot either has to say to him, look, you're going to have to change your game a little bit. You're going to have to track back and get a little bit more into the defensive side, or you drop him. And that is a big decision. I wouldn't like to be a manager telling Mo Salah that he's not starting every week, but that might be a decision that Arne Slot has to make, and there might have to be some difficult conversations in the coming weeks and months.